Edition of MPC Markets Morning Call, 24th of October, 2025. Stocks grind higher on US China positivity. I'm Mark Gardner. Look, it was a quiet night. I'm not going to lie to you. This will probably be a pretty short one today, guys. I tried to scrounge up some extra content around a few other news stories floating around, but as you can see, not much particularly going on. The news story was very much in the market yesterday. Trump just flip-flopping about he's meeting Z, he's not meeting Z, there's a meeting on, there's not a meeting on. So very easy to get confused as to what's happening because we've got a very confusing guy in the White House, essentially. But the meeting's apparently happening. The more creative of the financial press and analysts are saying it's a positive checkpoint for investor sentiment. But it's just realistically, it's more of the same. This is this normal cycle of we're going to have a trade deal done in a month. That was back in April. We've done a trade deal 5 times. There's never been a trade deal. So the lesson you're going to learn out of this is the sort of outlandish comments that Trump is generally saying. You're better off fading them, to be brutally honest. Outside of the government investments into particular industries like rare earths or antimony, and there was an announcement around quantum computing last night and Intel. And bring that manufacturing home. I mean, really, it's the only thing he's stuck to. And again, has the money turned up yet? We don't know. So, and they're super long-term projects as well. So he does tend to make these announcements, and then in the background, once the news cycle's finished with it, he scales them back. So, the devil's really in the detail. But what I guess at the end of the day, one of the biggest stories that's being completely ignored at the moment is the US debt ticked over 38 trillion. But obviously, there is a certain element of distraction around with the government shutdown happening, with the trade war potentially going on again and off again, and meetings on again and off again, etc. And him announcing big deals to buy stakes in private companies, and he then, potentially sending in National Guard into certain cities and things. It's starting to sound a little bit more like Russia than the US, but anyway, it's a wonderful distraction from the fact that at the end of the day, the government debt is by far and away their biggest problem. But he is a magician. Look over here, and distract from the underlying issue because he needs to get those rates down. So we're just drifting through into our 24th or odd day of government shutdown. We still really haven't got any figures. Corporate earnings have come out overnight, which have been pretty solid. But we'll start with a few. Moderna, which was down 2. They announced top-line results that wasn't earnings, from a phase 3 trial that didn't really meet the primary efficacy endpoint. So to get to phase 3 and not meet your efficacy, that's a disaster. So I'm surprised they're not down more, to be honest. But I guess that probably is a reflection of how much that healthcare sector has been beaten up this year in particular. American Airlines stock rose after carrier reported better than expected third quarter earnings. Narrower losses than anticipated, up 5.5%. These are the lovely things you can get in the bull market. Honeywell, which is sort of it's a manufacturing conglomerate, and it raised its profit forecast despite the impact of planned separation of its advanced materials unit, which is more their chip and memory making and things like that. I'm not I haven't done the absolute deep dive on Honeywell, but they've been making electronics for years and years and years. They're very big in the aerospace. Their customers are very big in the aerospace sectors. So, and then Beyond Meat, which having grown up on a cattle farm, something that I'll never try, but the fell 21%. But look, it's just reversing course, and it's climbed 450%. and it was heavily shorted, and the shorts sort of got caught out there. So probably calm down a little bit. And Rivian Automotive fell 1.3. They're set to lay off about 600 people, which, I mean, most of the time layoffs are met with quite good, quite good earnings. So, sorry, quite good positivity from most investors. So, but yeah, we overall we had this market rallied back quite reasonably. Tesla rallied. It was in those results yesterday were initially quite taken quite poorly because they missed, and so essentially all the people that treat Tesla as an automobile company, they were trading the initial numbers, and they sold it, and then progressively over the course of the day, where people got their teeth into the earnings call, and Elon was announcing that Q2 starts potentially for Cybercab and Optimus production lines were are basically on track. And then there's an AGM on, I believe, on the 4th of November potentially, sometime in that first week in November, first or second week in November. That's where Elon's going to need support from the shareholders to get his pay packet approved. So expect that the big show will be pretty. There'll be a fair song and dance about the future of the company there, and he's already released videos and things which very plainly outline that the future of the company is Optimus and the Cybercab and fully self-driving cars, which the total addressable market in those things is enormous. We're talking trillions and trillions of dollars, and if it goes well, it's the sort of thing that could easily make Tesla the biggest company in the world by market cap. So because it, and particularly he was talking about the energy banks as well, these shipping container sized lithium batteries and things. Like they can be used for backups at data centers, et cetera, et cetera. So energy was the revenue was up $1 billion, and it's at the moment it's just a small part of their overall strategy. But the compounding annual growth rates for all of these sectors that Elon's pushing the business towards is they're 30% plus for the next 5 to 10 years. Like that, to get 30% compounded annual growth for a sector, because they're all in their infancy. So that's why people are very bullish on it, and they're bullish on the technology. If you don't like Elon, just block it out. I mean, most people invest in companies that are where they wouldn't know the CEO's name. So just ignore him. But know that he's the best engineer and businessman in one human being's body that's probably ever walked the face of the planet. So just back that guy and don't listen to his tweets, essentially. We had a little bit of a run up in some of the defense stocks as well overnight. Wasn't anything major, just general geopolitical instability. And then the quantum computing companies rallied sharply. So I'm just going to go back to this in a minute. So this was a tweet that came out last night. The Trump administration's in talks to take equity stakes in quantum computing firms via $10 million funding. I don't know where it's a Wall Street Journal quote there. 10 million doesn't sound like a hell of a lot. But essentially, so I just wanted to run people through, because even I had to ask our boffins here. So the difference between quantum computing is that normal computing are ones and zeros, and quantum computing can be 1 and 0, but it can be also 1 and 0 at the same time. I'm sure there's a non-binary joke in there somewhere. But look, basically power. Its computing power exponentially increases, and at the moment the technology is not quite there. They need to be kept super, super cold. They have high error rates, but they can. I suppose it's a little bit like the human brain can think of multiple things at once, whereas a computer can only think about one thing at a time, albeit that it thinks of one thing at a time in very quick succession. So, the most everyday processing is going to be handled by classical computers, but there is huge advantages in tackling complex problems with these things, and it will be the next race, like technology race. So and will very much change computing, but it is a long way away. For the first time, like in history, America's thinking about something, at least a couple of years in advance, rather than reacting, because China's cornered the market after being well planned after 20 years. So that there's a couple of ticker codes there, qubits and things like that. I had a little bit of a look into it. I mean, look, these things are not going to be revenue generating for forever. And the likelihood is Google is one of the front runners in this as well. So essentially, you're probably going to see one of the a company like Google. They made a huge leap in quantum computing, I think 2 days ago. So I don't know how easy it is for the little guy to be a player in this, because I don't think it's cheap. So next week we've got an absolute chock-a-block calendar for earnings. So it's going to be very busy in terms of, I'm going to set the time to be on for the morning call at 8:30 in the morning every morning in Sydney time, which is when we started this morning. So we've got some pretty big names here. United Health, which is bouncing back out. We'll just see if that improvement comes since Buffett's invested. We like United Health, but look, it has a multitude of problems. But has been absolutely torn apart. It was the world's biggest healthcare company at one stage, but we're looking for the bounce. Wednesday we've got Microsoft, Meta, we've got Apple and Amazon on Thursday, that really only leaves Google, to be brutally honest. That'll have to be, I assume that'll be next week, and these earnings can change. But I mean, you've also got bigger names. You got Boeing, you've got Eli Lilly. They're fairly, they'll be fairly interesting results of quite a few of the oil companies towards the end of the week. Caterpillar's always seen as a bit of a bellwether of how things are going. Although I did have Caterpillar on the call yesterday on Ausbiz TV, and we were one thing that I did learn from it, and they don't mention much in their reporting, is there is extreme demand coming through for their massive diesel engines, which are the backups at all these new data centers. And I hadn't necessarily thought about that. You think of Caterpillar, you think of the big yellow dozers and trucks and excavators and etc. But they do make those massive industrial sized diesel engines that are the backups for data centers. Elon's trying to get into that space a little bit with those bigger lithium things, but with diesel, you just, it is a fair bit simpler in terms of not having to recharge. You just feed more diesel in, so diesel's not hard to get. So apparently there's been a lot of demand for that. So potentially can be a bit of a beneficiary from this data center rapid expansion. So yeah, we'll be fairly quiet towards the start of the week. I believe the Trump and Z have got to meet before, basically next week sometime. It'll be they're calling it a pull aside meeting. So there's no scheduled date yet. So look, as everything with Trump, expect drama. They'll probably cancel it and reschedule it 6 times between now and then. But yeah, and we had a bit of a recovery back in gold, silver, copper, platinum made a bit of ground back. Same with uranium. So those really hot trades pushed a little bit higher. Lithium bounced as well. Bitcoin bounced, and not much going on in the US dollar. So yeah, they're overall, I would expect a fairly quiet Friday. We've still got no numbers. There's still no sign of the US government shutdown finishing. Like I said, expect a bit of toing and froing and some stupid comments to come out of the leader of the free world as he goes into that meeting and to try and gain some leverage. But as I said at the start of the podcast, you probably most of these things just fade them, really, to be honest, unless they're an announcement about a government investments in sectors. So, and yeah, if you go and have a look at those quantum computing stocks, they move around quite a bit. So, not for the faint-hearted. I would suggest as general advice to trade small. Don't be swinging the bat at those things, and don't expect them to be coming into any revenue anytime soon. So, So yeah, but have a great day, everyone. For those of you who want to listen to our weekly podcast, Bulls versus Bears with Jonathan Takadena will be out this afternoon as well, where we just do a weekly wrap up on markets and cover a few topics. Yeah, we'll speak again next Monday morning. Cheers.